You know, it's really hard to look back and realize that RuneScape is over 20 years old. For nearly 2 decades, RuneScape has been a staple MMORPG for millions of people. It's gone through its ups and downs, but overall, it's a game that has stood the test of time within the ever-evolving video game industry. Anyways, I won't go further into the game's accolades because honestly, there's a bajillion content creators out there that can tell you why RuneScape is awesome. But let me present you with a question. When you think of RuneScape and how it plays, can you think of any competitors in the MMO landscape that feels similar to its addicting gameplay? Is there any other MMORPGs that really even get remotely close to how RuneScape feels and plays? Nearly 20 years have passed by, and truthfully, there have been very few that have ever tried to compete against RuneScape. Until now. Brighter Shores, the subject of today's video, is a new free-to-play MMORPG that has just entered early access at the beginning of November. Developed by Fen Research, a new company formed by the legendary Andrew Gower, the creator of RuneScape. Now, it's ironic that it took the creator of RuneScape itself to finally make a competitor to the game he created. But Brighter Shores aims to be more than just an alternative to RuneScape. It's looking to be an innovative game in the genre with fresh new ideas and quirks that will set itself apart from other titles. After jumping into the game on launch day and putting in a fair amount of time into Brighter Shores, does this game succeed at being RuneScape's spiritual successor, and more importantly, a fresh new take on the MMORPG genre? Let's talk about Brighter Shores. Like RuneScape back in the day, Brighter Shores is incredibly easy to jump into and start playing. Since it's free to play and in early access, all you need is a Steam account to start playing, since it currently does not have its own launcher. Once you log in, you are greeted with 3 new character slots where you can create a character and jump in game. Character creation is pretty standard as always. You can choose between male or female, various hair, clothing, facial options, as well as colors, and then finally a name. Beginning your adventure puts you into a standard tutorial quest that will teach you all the basics of Brighter Shores, including movement, interacting, combat, professions, and progression. The tutorial quest is actually quite involved and is rather lengthy, but it does cover practically everything you will need to know about the game. Playing through the tutorial, you'll obviously get a feel of the game's presentation and graphics as well. Graphically, Brighter Shores is pretty decent, basically having the same graphical look as modern-day RuneScape. Environments have a great amount of detail and care, with characters having a more stylized look rather than a realistic look, making the game run relatively smooth on most machines. The soundtrack of Brighter Shores has a bit of variety from more thematic atmospheric tunes to more upbeat, bombastic tracks. I like the soundtrack here, but truthfully, most songs you hear sort of blend together, at least it did for me. Getting back to the game's tutorial, once you complete it, you'll unlock a couple of spells, and then the game will push you towards the main game story quests, which have a much bigger emphasis on the game than its predecessor RuneScape. The story of Brighter Shores covers you as an adventurer joining the Hopeport Guard in an effort to make a name for yourself. An impending darkness has started to surround the region, and it's up to you and the Guard to investigate the phenomenon and help protect the citizens of Hopeport. A simple story, but it's a lot more in your face in this game than other MMORPGs, since you literally cannot progress in the game to other areas until you play through each story quest. This will make or break Brighter Shores for some people, but we'll get more into that later in the video. First, let's talk about the game's main features that are introduced to you in the tutorial. First up is combat. Combat in Brighter Shores is mostly a hands-off affair, obviously similar to RuneScape. Engaging in combat with an enemy requires that you click on them, select your weapon of choice, and then begin combat. Doing so will place you into a combat situation where you watch your character fight the enemy until either you or the enemy is defeated. Typically, there is very little you are actually engaging in with most combat situations. You mostly just select whatever you use at the beginning of combat and watch things play out. There is some influence you do have in combat, which boils down to your equipment and consumable potions. Weapons have 3 different types: one-handed, two-handed, and ranged. Armor has the normal slots of head, legs, feet, chest, hands, shield, accessory, and cape. All equipment can either be crafted or looted from enemies, with loot having rarities like normal MMORPGs, from common to uncommon to rare and to epic. There is also a class system that gets unlocked in the second area during a quest where you can choose between 3 classes that also influence the weapons and armor that you can equip. The 3 classes are Guardian, Cryo Knight, and Hammer Mage, but at the time of this video, they really don't have much difference between them besides what armor you have access to, besides maybe some small stat differences in elemental defense and attack. And I hope that in the future, they do give the option that you can change between your class choice, because currently it is a permanent choice. Each piece of equipment has defensive values, attack power in terms of weapons, and an element. Enemies will have elemental affinities and weaknesses that you can take advantage of to deal more damage or less damage depending on your weapon choices. On the other hand, enemies can have the same advantage against you, so be careful of what you fight and their affinities to avoid dying in combat, even though death, as far as I could tell, had no consequence other than inconvenience. Potions, which are obtained from the alchemist profession, can help heal you in difficult fights or improve damage of a specific element, so you have the advantage against the enemy weak to it. Special attacks are a planned feature for combat, but unfortunately are not released yet. That's really all there is to combat, which to some can feel a little too simplistic. Luckily, boss monsters do seem to have more mechanically engaging fights, but they are few and far between at the time of early access. But the developers have stated that more engaging combat encounters are coming. Professions is this game's skills, and there is quite a lot of them right out of the gate. Currently, at the time of this video, there is a total of 18 professions, with more coming. The current available professions are Guard, Chef, Fisher, Forager, Alchemist, Scout, Gatherer, Woodcutter, Carpenter, Mine Fighter, Bonewright, Miner, Blacksmith, Stonemason, Watchperson, Detective, Leatherworker, and Merchant, with the evidence of 3 future professions being Shieldbearer, Builder, and Armorer. The combat professions are sadly kinda copy and paste, with nothing being really all that different between them. The other professions, though, work exactly how you'd imagine. Activities like collecting an item, crafting, or fighting an enemy will grant XP towards that profession, and eventually will level it up with specific levels, unlocking more content, recipes, or items. Professions have a titanic max level of 500, so as you can imagine, players will have a ton of grinding to do to reach max levels in these professions, and your enjoyment of the grinding will really depend on how much you like doing repetitive content for months on end. The game is obviously designed to be something you slowly tackle over months and eventually years. After all, it's an MMORPG. They want you to keep playing. There is a couple of systems that do help with the grind, though, that are interesting. For example, the chef profession has the task board, where every hour or so, you can cook specific dishes and deliver them to NPCs for a burst of XP and money. Various professions also have the ability to queue tasks that can be checked after a certain amount of time later, that also give a chunk of XP, like the fisherman profession that can leave a lobster pot to collect lobsters 12 hours later. Any XP you earn in activities go toward a system called knowledge points. Knowledge points unlock for each skill at level 20, with knowledge points able to be converted to chunks of XP, money, or unlockable activities. Typically, you want to convert your knowledge points to XP, as that's more useful, but the activities you can unlock for each skill are passive activities that can be performed when you log off, giving your character XP even when you are offline. All of these systems help break up the monotony of grinding, and I'm sure there is even more systems in development for each profession. Unfortunately, there is a massive discount disconnect on how professions work though that can really damper your experience with Brighter Shores, but trust me, like I said earlier in the video, we are getting to that. The next feature, which is a staple in this type of game, is questing and exploration. Questing in Brighter Shores is pretty much exactly like how questing is in RuneScape. Each area has a set main story quest that you are encouraged to complete to unlock the next zone, but there are a few side quests available to complete as well that grant some major rewards, like huge chunks of XP, or something as major as access to storage. Instead of the normal quest fodder that you'd see in games, like killing a set number of enemies, Brighter Shores takes quests and puts a bit more involvement into them. Some will present puzzles you have to solve, others require that you pay attention to your environments and explore areas you may have missed. Some may have you fight special boss monsters. Questing is a lot more engaging in Brighter Shores than other MMORPGs, and usually require a bit more problem solving from the player. I'm also glad to see the slight sense of humor in the quest storylines to add a bit of flavor and context in what you are doing. Ultimately, quests are some of the best and most challenging content Brighter Shores has to offer currently, and the rewards are nearly essential, especially when it comes to the story quests, which at this point, let's talk about how the game's separate episodes work. As you may have noticed through some of the footage of the game, professions and zones are separated by episodes, with 4 in total. The current episodes are Hopeport, Hope Forest, Mine of Mantuban, and the Chronopolis. Each zone acts as a central hub that you can move back and forth between. The thing that confuses most players, though, is how each episode is separated from one another. Remember how I said each combat profession is basically copy and pasted from one another? That's basically because each episode has its own progression that starts from scratch when you unlock it. You cannot carry over certain progression perks you unlocked from previous episodes over to another. So if you leveled to say 100 in Guard in episode 1, when you start episode 2, your combat profession, the Scout, starts all the way back at level 1, with none of your earned equipment carrying over. That's a huge slap in the face for players, at least at first until you get used to the system. Grinding for gear again can be a refreshing experience when you get to a new area, and there is a system called tuning that allows you to find equipment that can then be adjusted to be used in any of the episodes using that zone's obelisk, as well as being able to obviously craft equipment. I just wish combat professions felt different from one another to really make starting over more exciting. Besides combat, your other professions you unlock also obviously start at level 1 when you unlock a new zone, and it can feel really jarring to see your progress starting back at 0. Now technically some professions do interact with each other, like items gathered in episode 2 can potentially be used for Alchemist in episode 1, but profession interactivity is pretty barren, and some professions just feel redundant. Like, what is so different between foraging and gathering? This system can give the feeling that any progress you make in a previous episode feel pointless if you aren't really carrying anything over from zone to zone. But I do have to admit, you do get used to this system, and once you've unlocked all areas, you begin to see how each area does interact with each other, even if it's not much at first. Unfortunately, exploration in general has an odd design to it, with the world being completely separated by small instanced maps, with each step being a tile. As you can probably tell from some of the footage, as you move within the world of Brighter Shores, each area is separated by small maps within an episode, instead of one seamless open world. And since each zone is separated by unlockable episodes, exploration is a lot more linear than other MMORPGs. Instead of one big open sandbox world, Brighter Shores feels more like a bunch of small playgrounds. I suppose that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I can't help but feel like a more open-ended world would have felt better in design. The last couple things to talk about will be the game's community features and monetization. Currently at the time of early access, Brighter Shores doesn't really have much in terms of community features. There is no guild/clan system, no player trading, no party system for combat or auction house, and no PvP. The developers have emphasized that those features are currently in development and are coming, so expect those features to be implemented soon, but it's worth notating that at the time of release, Brighter Shores feels feels like an MMORPG that plays like a single-player game. Basic community features are here though, like a friends list and chat, but that's really about it. Monetization-wise, Brighter Shores is aiming to be a free-to-play title with a subscription option. Currently, the free-to-play access allows you to play all the way up to episode 2. The subscription grants access to further episodes, as well as allowing you to have some other small perks, like allowing you to have a unique name, armor dyes that will allow you to customize your armor cosmetically, and player trading once it's implemented. Membership currently at release is only $6 a month, and the developers have stated that there is no plans for microtransactions or a cash shop. Obviously, this mimics old school RuneScape's monetization model, only having a subscription option with no pay to win. Not to mention the free-to-play area of the game is substantial enough to where there is plenty of content to experience without spending a dime, but it is supposed to act as a demo to the game, enticing players to potentially purchase the subscription for more content. Overall, your enjoyment of Brighter Shores is going to ultimately teeter on some of its design choices. Do you like a more open sandbox experience versus a condensed linear world? Can you grow to appreciate starting fresh anytime a new episode unlocks? Truthfully, I really do like some of the things Brighter Shores is doing. It's different enough from RuneScape's legacy that I genuinely feel that Brighter Shores could potentially grow to become a serious alternative to it. Obviously, if you are a veteran to RuneScape, odds are you are already playing it or at least gave it a shot. I am concerned that what may ultimately hold back the game from becoming huge is its odd systems, but the developers have asked the community to give the game a chance, and with it being free to play, I think it's at least worth checking out. Let's get to my final thoughts. If you are a veteran of RuneScape or someone simply looking for an alternative to it, Brighter Shores is arguably one of the best alternatives out there. Obviously, the game is similar to RuneScape in much of its design because it's literally created by the same person who created RuneScape. The game is free to play with a very fair and cheap subscription option for those who want to support the game and get more out of it. So if you want to try the game to see if you like it, you can do so without any cost. And with the game only having subscriptions, that means that there is no pay to win since there is no cash shop or microtransactions. For those that like old school skill-based MMORPGs, Brighter Shores follows that design philosophy, sporting 18 different professions with more coming, even if technically some of those professions are redundant. Lastly, performance-wise, the game plays very smoothly with rarely any bugs or hiccups, and for those who don't have a crazy expensive gaming rig, this game should play very well on lower end hardware. So while I personally think Brighter Shores does do enough to set itself apart from its older brother, it's really hard to not compare the game heavily to RuneScape, leading to the question, why play this over RuneScape? It's going to be a major struggle for Brighter Shores, meaning it's going to need to do enough to bring in a brand new audience, which may be a bit hard due to its odd design choices. Not everyone is going to appreciate the oddity of having to start combat progression over in each episode. There will be some who do not care for the linear progression, exploration, and enclosed world design. Sure, you can get used to it and even grow to appreciate it, but it is admittedly a very jarring system. Combat in Brighter Shores, at least at the time of this video, is admittedly pretty shallow, with most of your fights just playing out on their own with very little influence from the player. There are features coming in the future that will spice up combat, but as of right now, it has a lot to be desired. Which leads to my last point. Since the game is in early access, there is just a lot of stuff currently missing. Trading, clans, PvP, partying, dungeons, and endgame bosses are features the game needs sooner rather than later. It's easy to say that all of those features are coming, but nowadays, the MMORPG audience just has so many other games to choose from. If players have to wait too long for those features to come out, many of them will simply quit because they grew impatient. And even when those things are released, will any of those players actually come back? Personally, I think Brighter Shores has enough quality to sustain a decent population, but I can't help but wonder what the game's future will be like in 2025 and onward. I really am cheering for the success of this game. I think many of us have been waiting for a new MMORPG to really capture the magic that RuneScape set on our young minds. Brighter Shores has so much potential, and it really seems like it's got a fairly successful launch so far. But when I think about its future, I worry about how it will fare in a market where there is just so many other games to play. Remember, I as a RuneScape veteran was basically this game's target audience to an extent. Will Brighter Shores be able to capture a brand new modern audience? Anyways, what do you think of Brighter Shores? Are you playing it? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel to support my content. Follow all my social media in the links down in the description below, and I hope to see you all next time.